Welcome to Retirement Rescue Radio, a show specifically designed to help retirees and pre-retirees maximize their financial efficiency so you can live the retirement lifestyle you've always imagined. Your host is Nate Miller, investment advisor representative and author of the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap. Nate discusses thoughts and ideas from some of today's most knowledgeable professionals in the field of finance. He offers strategies along the way to help you make better financial decisions so you can maximize your retirement. This is Retirement Rescue Radio.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Retirement Rescue Radio. I'm your host, Nate Miller, and today we're going to be continuing our talk on taxes, but today is not a rant on taxes like I normally do. Today is going to be how to lower your taxes with a very, very specific tool called a donor advised fund. All right. What is a donor advised fund? Why would you want to use one of these? And who is it really for? Who does it really benefit the most? We're going to answer all that and more. So what it is, the way that I like to explain what it is it's really like a savings account for your charitable contributions, right? And so what that means is you can actually contribute to this donor advised fund and get a deduction for it when you put the money in. Then it can sit in there and actually be invested. I mean, we use TD Ameritrade at Miller Retirement Group quite a bit, and it'll be at TD Ameritrade, and you can invest it. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, different portfolios, you name it. It can go into those different types of investments and therefore also grow so that you can ultimately end up giving more to charity. But the reason it's really, really good is it's going to work for those that are very, very charitable inclined. Maybe they've got more money than really what they actually need throughout retirement, and they're giving some to churches and charities because they're charitably inclined. And it's also a way to give before you pass away, right? Because it's always great to have a charity or a church that's on your heart that you leave money to when you pass away. And that's great. But when you pass away, you don't really get any kind of a tax deduction for leaving that money to charity. And so this is a way that you can actually be charitably inclined, recognize the feeling that you get from helping others out, and get a tax deduction while you work, or sorry, not while you work, while you're retired, while you're still living, rather than just waiting to give it all when you pass away. Because this donor advised fund also allows a lot of flexibility from a tax standpoint. Okay. And so this is going to be really, really useful because, well, first let's go through the dynamics of it. So you can put money into this just like anything else. So let's say you want to put money from your IRA in there in the form of like a charitable contribution, QCD type of a thing. Your required minimum distribution could go into there. Let's say you just got your regular checks that you want to write that can go in there. You can get a tax deduction. And if you remember one of my episodes, I believe, where I talked about qualified charitable deductions, or QCDs, as we call them in the industry, is here's why. What really makes this really good and flexible is because, let's say you're retired, which most of y'all that are listening to this tend to be, and you are charitably inclined, which a lot of my clients are as well, and you want to give some of your required minimum distribution to church, right? Maybe you don't need all of it, and so you're giving some of that to church. If you receive your required minimum distribution and then write your check or contribute via some kind of an app that your church might have or whatever, right? If you receive the funds first and then donate to the charity, well, then now you have to itemize in order to get that charitable deduction. However, if you just have whatever company's holding the money, if it's sitting at TD Ameritrade or Fidelity or Schwab, or if it's an annuity, the annuity company, if you just have whatever company has that IRA, send it directly to the charity, basically bypassing you, then you don't have to deduct it on the itemized worksheet. You actually get to deduct it directly from your income. And the reason that small detail is important is that we all get a standard deduction no matter what. If you're married filing jointly, it's over $20-some thousand now, goes up every year, indexed for inflation. If you're single, around $12,000. And so it's a large deduction. That means if you're married, you have to contribute with your mortgage interest, which most of us, if we're retired, our mortgage is paid off, so we're not paying interest anymore. We'll still have our real estate taxes that we got to pay, but usually that mean like all of our deductions are gone when we retire. A lot of times our kids, which we used to get deductions for, they've grown up and left, right? So our deductions just move to another city or whatever, right? They're trying to create their own deductions. And then we've paid off our houses, so we're not able to itemize anymore. So most people in retirement are using the standard deduction, even if they itemize, even if they contribute to charity. So if they donate to charity, say only like $5,000, and the rest of the real estate taxes and other things that they could itemize do not beat that standard deduction, well, they get no extra benefit for that $5,000 that they gave from a tax standpoint. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't give, right? But they get no tax deduction for that. However, if they would have taken that from their IRA as a required minimum distribution and just had it sent directly to the charity, they would get a deduction. It would basically be like that $5,000 distribution didn't even happen, right? That's how the IRS looks at it. They get the full $5,000 deduction, and they still get the full standard deduction as well. So now it's on top of it, not you have to beat it. Okay, so that's very important when it comes to QCDs. Just a little quick reminder there of how that works. So now with this donor advised fund, there's a lot of other things that can go into this. One, there's no limits, right? So you're not limited on donating only 5,000 or 7,000 if you're over 50 or whatever, for catch-up contributions. And it doesn't work like that. It's not necessarily a retirement account that they have those limitations set on it. And so you can contribute, just write a check from your checking account, require minimum distribution. You can gift highly appreciated non-qualified stock into that. Non-qualified, what does that mean? Again, that means it's not in an IRA. It's not in a Roth. It's just a regular brokerage account where the money that went in wasn't taxed, but all the growth will be. So let's say you bought a bunch of mutual funds or stocks. It doesn't matter. Let's say you bought them for $100,000 and now they've grown over the years to $200,000. You're sitting there, you're like, man, if I sell these, I got to pay a gain on $100,000. Well, what if you have to actually gifted $5,000 into this donor advised fund? So now not only do you not pay taxes on that $5,000 worth of gain, you actually get a deduction for doing that. If you just send it right to the donor advised fund, you can even keep it in the same stocks, right? You just gift those securities to the donor advised fund. And so now what that means is you can take advantage of some of those highly appreciated avenues or areas, highly appreciated positions that you've got, and be charitably inclined. Just send them right over that. And a lot of times with us, I mean, if you're at TD Ameritrade, if you got your accounts at TD Ameritrade, you've got your donor advised fund at TD Ameritrade, it's very simple. Now, the key there is do not sell the positions and then take receipt of them. All right. That would not qualify as the deduction, right? You would still have to pay tax on that capital gain. And then you'd still get the deduction after that, but you would still be paying the capital gains tax. If you just send it directly over to the donor advised fund, you don't have to pay the capital gains tax and you get the deduction. So that's how you actually want to make sure that you do it the right way. All right. So it works well for highly appreciated non-qualified stock. That's one area. It also works great for tax planning when it comes to Roth conversions. So if you've listened to my podcast for any number of times, especially the ones that are tax focused, if we've talked about how much tax you could possibly pay in retirement. Matter of fact, maybe you should go back and listen to one that I did with Marty Ruby. This would have been quite a while ago. I think I was still in maybe the 40s or 50s, and we've done over 100 right now. We'll try to link to it in the show notes or the comments wherever you're listening to this. And that one, it talks about kind of the tax impact that could happen over your lifetime with your IRA balance if you just took required minimum distributions, reinvested that you didn't need, and then when you pass away, your kids still got to pay tax on all that versus converting that to a Roth, and how much tax would you actually pay? And so what we're trying to do is help people pay the least amount of tax that they're legally obligated to pay. So now enter in a donor advised fund. And let's say you do want to do some large Roth conversions And so let's say, and once again, this is going back to that, let's just use a hypothetical example here. Let's say we got a married couple, and between all of the income that they have in retirement, Social Securities for the two of them, maybe they've got, one of them has a pension, and then they're taking money out to live off of from their IRAs and their investments. And let's say that they're making $100,000, right? So if they're making $100,000 as married, if you take your deductions off of that, standard deduction or whatever, you're still in the 12% tax bracket currently, until the Tax Cut and Job Acts go away in 2026, then they'll be back up to 15, but you're still in the 12% federal. Now we live in the state of Kansas, and over 30,000, you're in the 5.7 basically percent bracket there. So let's just call it 12 and 6, that's 18. Let's just call it 20%. All right. So let's say you're paying 20% tax at this point. And so if you wanted to donate to charity, you have to beat that $20-some thousand standard deduction. Well, if you're only given like 5,000 or maybe 10,000 a year, you might not be able to hit that. Well, so I'm going through two things at once here. Sorry, I talked about Roth conversions first off, but now we're going through something else. So we're going through strategic timing of your contribution. So let's say, you give $5,000 a year, but that's never going to get you over that standard deduction. So what if you front loaded what you knew you were going to contribute? Let's say you did 5 years worth of that $5,000 that's normally going to church, and you did all of that in 1 year. Well, now that's $25,000 that goes in there. And that $25,000 is on top of your real estate tax or any of those other, deductions that you might get. So now you are able to itemize actually. So the money goes into the donor advised fund, gets invested, you get the deduction that year, and then you can actually figure out, you control all of the timing of when that money goes to the charities. So if you give $25,000 in 1 year to the donor advised fund, you get the $25,000 deduction that year on top of real estate taxes and all that. And then you can just divvy out the $5,000 every single year for the next 5 years. And you're going to have growth on top of that as well. And so that helps with the timing of, getting a bigger deduction, a bigger standard deduction or itemized deduction, right? So it helps out with that. And then take that another step further for Roth conversions. So let's say, you're going to be doing some sizable Roth conversions in the future years. Well, then maybe what we're going to do is we're going to contribute some to this donor advised fund to offset some of those Roth conversions. So just to give a quick, easy round numbers, let's say you're going to do a Roth conversion of $50,000 and you decide, well, you know what? I give a ton to charity, so I'm going to put $50,000 in my donor advised fund and convert $50,000. And so therefore it's a wash, right? So you're not paying any extra tax by making that Roth conversion. Obviously, that's going to work for those that have some very large IRA balances and may not need all of it to live off of, right? So that's going to be who that's for. It's not going to be somebody that might have to live off of every cent and make sure they're squeezing everything they can out of every single penny they've invested. So this is going to be for the more affluent, the more higher net worth clients that give large sums of money. That strategy works very, very well for them. All right. I think that's about it. And so we have the ability to do donor advised funds at Miller Retirement Group. And so if this is something that can benefit you, for example, and it can be as simple, you can just call it something very simple, like the Miller Family Fund. Bam, that's it. The Miller Family Fund. And what's interesting is, you can control who it goes to. You can control when it goes, and other people can also contribute to it. That's what's cool. They can contribute to a donor advised fund. They can contribute to your donor advised fund. They can get a deduction for it, and you still control when those distributions happen to what charities. And so personally, the charities that tend to be on my heart that I've noticed, like anytime you kind of get teary eyed when somebody's talking about something, that's usually a sign that is where some of your dollars should go if you're going to be donating. And for me, it's childhood, or actually you can call it pediatric cancer patients, right? My niece got leukemia when she was 2 years old, and she actually has Down syndrome and had to have heart surgery when she was like 6 months old. So she's been through some stuff, right? And so there's a charity here in town in Lawrence called the Rock Chalk Roundball Classic, led by Brian Haney, and it benefits pediatric cancer patients and their families. And I became involved with that a few years ago, before I even started setting anything up with donor advised funds. And so that's one. And then two would be anything related to the military. My dad was in Vietnam. I've got an older brother that is a retired Air Force, another brother that was actually in the reserves, Army reserves. There's just a lot. And my father-in-law is retired Navy, and so like military is around me. And anytime I hear stories of whether it be bravery, whether it be valor, whether it be, just, somebody getting killed and what happened to their family, that just, I'm a muddy mess after that. And so here recently, we were at a training event in Houston, and the charity event that was going to be benefited at that time, the charity was called Folds of Honor, which was created to give scholarships to the spouses and children of people who have either been killed in action or severely wounded. We're talking like missing legs and arms and stuff like that. And they give scholarships so they can get educated and be able to, go on and have great lives. And they had a lot of stories. And so we were able to contribute to that. So that's another area. So those are two main areas that are on my heart, that the donor advised fund, that's where the funds will go. And so if somebody else also has some of those same things in line with you on where these monies can be put, then they can actually contribute to your donor advised fund, knowing that the funds are going to go to someplace that is also on their heart. Like if they don't want to set up a donor advised fund, they just want to contribute to yours, they can do that too. So there's that. And so what I would say is if you are thinking of setting one of those up, figure out what charities you're going to say yes to and what charities you're going to say no to, because I will tell you that I have so many charities that are always asking for money. And we could either be like a shotgun and have a little bit of impact in a lot of different areas, or what I've chosen to do is be laser focused on just a couple. And, a laser that can cut glass. I think lasers can cut diamonds too. I'm not a gem expert here, right? And so a shotgun cannot. So you can do a lot of benefit, you can help a lot of people a lot deeper if you go deeper in. And in my opinion, that's how I've chosen to do it. And so those are the areas. And then another one would be there's a Women's Insight Center. It used to be called, what did it used to be called? But they changed the name of it. And so it basically helps out mostly women, but also families that are thinking of maybe aborting their child and instead decide to have the child. And so there's a lot of things that go along with that they need, whether it's, baby items, diapers, wipes, you name it, anything, clothing, anything that goes towards babies, baby food, formula, you name it, that kind of stuff. So that would be another one. So those are the main three that are going to be getting like the bulk of our Miller Family Fund contributions or donations. And what is it for you? I don't know, but I would decide what that is. And then you can talk to us about setting one of those up, and we can talk about strategic gifting and also strategic tax planning at the same time, right? So I can get all nerdy and taxy on. I found a way to turn charitable giving into a tax discussion. So you're welcome if you wanted that. So with the new big standard deduction being as big as it is, it used to be only about a third of the population that itemized. Now it's under 10%. And that just comes from like the IRS, right? So this is a way of still being able to figure out how to get that big standard deduction in retirement, but also still be able to give and get deductions for giving if we can't beat that standard deduction. So this is just some creative ways that we're wanting to do that. So I think that's about it, guys. So I appreciate you sticking around for a tax discussion where I was not ranting. I was actually talking about a cool way to give to churches and charities and things that are on our heart. So that's it, guys. Take care, and we'll talk to you next week.